It took me longer than I'd like to admit to fully appreciate how powerful this card is. V of the Vanguard might be my favorite card in Boltyn, and whether your deck is running Raiden or Sabers, it is certainly a cornerstone in any Boltyn deck. This video will explain everything from the basics to the nuances and provide visual examples of how to play V of the Vanguard like an expert. As one of his specializations, V synergizes perfectly with Boltyn's ability. The text on V says, as an additional cost to play it, charge cards to your soul any number of times, and for each light card you charge to V, attacks on this combat chain gain +1 attack damage. That means every single attacking link on the whole chain gets the buff, not just light cards, and not just attack actions. Boltyn's attack reaction ability says we can banish a card from our soul to give go again to any attack as long as its current damage is greater than its base damage, which means that with enough cards in soul, we can give go again to every attack we play on V of the Vanguard's combat chain, including V itself. Pretty sweet, right? One thing to remember though is that playing or using non-attack actions closes the combat chain, which is why V of the Vanguard does not synergize well with Boltyn's other specialization, Lumina Ascension. Playing Lumina after V would break the combat chain, meaning we would lose any buffs from V for the rest of the turn. The release of Spirit of Eirina has since fixed this synergy, however, turning the combination of these two specs into one of the most exciting hands you can play, which we'll cover in visual detail later in this video. The fact that V states our attacks will only get +1 damage for each light card we charge is one of the reasons to keep the number of non-light cards in our deck as low as possible. Drawing non-light warrior or generic cards on turns we want to go wide with V really hinders our ability to maximize value on our V turns. Unless the card is an above-rate attack that we can add to the end of our combat chain, something like Red Snatch, I think it's best to steer away from non-light cards as much as possible when deck building. Let's take a look at a basic 4-card V of the Vanguard hand so you can start to get a feel for how to evaluate playing these turns. The general structure to V turns goes something like this. Play V, charging at least one light card, follow it up with Raiden, and finally some other attack. With this hand, my initial thought is to attack with V, then Raiden, and either Express Lightning or Engulfing Light. Ending combat chains with cards that threaten on hits is pretty strong, so let's choose to attack with Engulfing in our final chain link and charge the Steel Hand and Express. You probably noticed we also need to have resources available to play V since it costs 1 resource. Personally, I'm happiest when I'm able to pay for V with Tunic counters. Let's play this out on the board. With our Tunic counter on 3, we can use it as a resource to pay for V and charge 2 light cards as an additional cost. This will give our attack and any additional attacks on this chain +2 damage. We'll use Boltyn's ability to banish from soul to give V go again, and swing Raiden for 5. Banish from soul for go again one more time, and attack with Engulfing Light for another 5 to end our chain. So from charging 2 light cards to V, we added 6 damage, which is on rate at 3 damage per card. If this is how the math works, then wouldn't it be better to charge only 1 card and spread its damage out across more attacks so that we get 4 value out of the charge card, plus the 4 damage we'd get from attacking with Express? Yes, absolutely. But remember that we can only do that if we have enough cards in Soul to give each attack go again. With only 1 card in Soul, we can only give go again to our first attack. Building Soul before V turns is important for maximizing Boltyn's explosive damage turns. Going wide is also a reason to keep in mind that we can charge non-light cards to V when we need to. We just won't get the damage buffs for the non-light cards we charge. Consider the same hand, but replace Express Lightning with Sink Below. If we want to go V into Raiden into Engulfing Light, we need to charge both the Steel Hand and Sink Below. Charging 2 cards to V ensures we have enough cards in Soul to banish for go again to attack as widely as we want to. Now that you're familiar with the basics, let's look at a full board. If you're thinking these turns could be even stronger if V is played from Arsenal, you're absolutely correct. Boltyn's playstyle is explosive in nature, and he is at his best when he can play 5-card hands, using the Tunic counters to pay for V from Arsenal. Having V in Arsenal and Tunic on 3 means we've probably already spent a turn or two setting up before getting to our V turn, so let's put a couple cards in Soul and I'll show you one of my favorite ways to swing tempo. We'll go back to our original hand, but add a Beacon of Victory as our 5th card. Beacon lets us banish any number of cards from our soul as an attack reaction to give the attack a damage buff equal to the number of cards we banish. If we charge this turn, we also get to tutor a card from our deck that costs equal or less than the number of cards we banished, and put it in our hand. We'll start our turn with V, charge the Steel Hand and Express, go again into Raiden for 5, and again into Engulfing for 5. Even if they double block the Engulfing with 2 attack actions and pump it to 6, we can play Beacon of Victory and banish a card from Soul to give the attack another +1 and tutor a card from our deck. Let's consider what to get from our deck. Depending on the state of the game, we might want to apply pressure to the opponent by adding another attack to our current combat chain. The attack would need to cost 0 though, since we have no resources floating. Illuminate or Snatch could be good options if we want to take this path. Lumina Ascension is generally a good card to tutor for, but we don't have Spirit of Eirina on the board, so we can't play Lumina this turn, meaning it would go into Arsenal without us knowing if we'll be able to play it next turn. My choice here would be to grab another V to slot into Arsenal for our next turn and plan to go off a second time. By not adding an attack to the current chain, we don't need to banish for go again, and since Engulfing is now hitting, we'll be able to start our next V turn with 2 cards already in Soul. Back-to-back V turns puts the opponent in a really tough spot, and will usually result in Boltyn gaining some tempo. Bolting Blade has one of the strongest synergies with V of the Vanguard. Bolting is a 7 damage attack that costs 4 resources at face value, but is discounted 2 resources for every card charged the turn you play it. This means we can play Bolting for free on turns where we charge at least 2 cards to V. One of V of the Vanguard's dream turns goes something like this. V for 5, into Raiden for 5, into Bolting for 9, followed by another Bolting for 9. That's 28 damage, and we're not even running Sabers. Opponents will have a difficult time dealing with this in a single turn, as this is damage threatened before blocks. So far, we've talked about how to use V in Raiden matches, but what about Sabers? By now, it should be no surprise that V is a powerhouse and can be a tremendous help even when our Soul and Arsenal are empty, but we need to put pressure on the opponent. With a single blue pitch and 2 light cards, we can cover the cost of V, give our attacks +2, and have enough Soul to swing both Sabers and cover the cost to swing them. This is also a great line to plan for in limited matches, where we also run one-handed weapons that cost 1. Remember, your second axe will get +1 from swinging it after the first one. It's no secret that both of Boltyn's specializations are now able to synergize together with the help of Spirit of Eirina. The combination of these 2 specs is one of the most exciting hands you can play, since we can start our Saber combo turns by attacking with V, which we couldn't do before. While V plus double Lumina is one of the biggest turns you can have, we can also use V of the Vanguard to regain tempo in Saber matches, where we only ever draw 1 combo piece or are forced to block with 1 as well. Suppose we have double Lumina in hand and arsenal and we're ready to combo, but it's taken a while to draw the second one, and the opponent has us so low on life that we have to use a card to block. We don't want to block with our charge card, and we can't pay for Soul Shield and still have enough to pay for V and charge next turn, so we're forced to block with Beacon or Lumina. In this situation, I value keeping the Beacon in the deck more highly than Lumina, since we have the potential to attack react a lot of surprise damage with it, and another Lumina turn would require more things lining up well for us. So we'll hold on to the Beacon and block with the Lumina. We can't double Lumina anymore going into our turn, but V can help us get some of that value back. We'll start our turn by cracking Courage of Bladehold to make our Sabers free, and pay to break Gallantry, giving our Sabers +1 for the turn. We pay for V's attack with our floating resource and charge a card, bumping V's damage up to 4. I'm only going to use 1 die to represent the attack's damage now that you understand the concept. We banish for go again and swing our first Saber for 4. We want to get our value from Lumina, but we'll bait out any D-reacts from the opponent by banishing for go again first. The opponent reacts with a Sink Below and we play Lumina at instant speed. This gains us an action point and bumps our Saber up to 5. Which gets over their Sink Below and will trigger Lumina's on hits. Now, it's unlikely the opponent would have blocked that way unless they're also low on life. Since our combo turn is telegraphed by breaking our equipment, they'd be expecting Lumina here. This is now the first Saber swing of 4, which we'll keep track of with dice. We reveal off the top and add light cards to soul due to Lumina's effects, which also gain us life. We repeat this process to continue our Saber attacks and use our action point on the final swing. 24 damage threatened plus 4 points of life gained would not have been possible without the additional buffs from V, and creating awkward breakpoints for our opponent to deal with. Mastering Spirit of Eirina is critical to piloting Boltyn like a champion, which you can learn how to do in this next video.